Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We have to turn the mic up. It's too low. We'd like to welcome everyone to our weekly Sunday Krishna book reading to Srila Prabhupada. We're so grateful that Srila Prabhupada allows us to come to his sacred room here in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So before we begin, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Nama Om Vishnavadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpa Durubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So for all of you online, please note the subtitles underneath. That will help you to follow along. And we're in the chapter, what chapter is it? Chapter 87, entitled Prayers by the Personified Vedas. We're about 3/4 through, starting with this paragraph. That the cosmic world is only temporarily manifested does not mean that it is false, or that the source of its manifestation is false. Since the source of its manifestation is truth, the manifestation is also truth, but one must know how to utilize it. The example of the earthen pot may be cited again. The earthen pot produced from the whole earth is temporary, but when used for a proper purpose, the earthen pot is not false. The Vaishnava philosophers know how to utilize the temporary construction of this material world, just as a sane man knows how to utilize the temporary construction of the earthen pot. When the earthen pot is used for a wrong purpose, that is false. Similarly, the human body or the material world, when used for sense gratification, is false. But if the human body and the material creation are used for the service of the Supreme Lord, their activities are never false. It is therefore confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita that even slightly using the body and the material world for the service of the Lord can deliver a person from the gravest danger. When properly utilized, neither the superior nor inferior energies emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead are false.
As far as fruitive activities are concerned, they are mainly based on the platform of sense gratification. Therefore, an advanced Krishna conscious person does not take to them. The result of fruitive activities can elevate one to the higher planetary system. But as it is said in the Bhagavad-Gita, foolish persons, after exhausting the results of their pious activities in the heavenly kingdoms, come back again to this lower planetary system and then again try to go to the higher planetary system. Their only profit is to take the trouble of going and coming back. Just as at present, many material scientists are spoiling their time by trying to go to the moon planet and again coming back. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are described by the Vedas personified as Andha Parampara, or blind followers of the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Although such ceremonies are certainly mentioned in the Vedas, they are not meant for the intelligent class of men. Men who are too much attached to material enjoyments are captivated by the prospect of being elevated to the higher planetary system, and so they take to such ritualistic activities. But persons who are intelligent, who have taken shelter of a bona fide spiritual master to see things as they are, do not take to fruitive activities but engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Persons who are not devotees take to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies for materialistic reasons, and then they are bewildered. A vivid example may be given. An intelligent person possessing $1 million in currency notes does not hold the money without using it, even though he knows perfectly well that the currency notes in themselves are nothing but paper. When one has $1 million in currency notes, he is actually holding only a huge bunch of papers. But if he utilizes it for a purpose, then he benefits. Similarly, although this material world may be false, just like the paper, it has its proper beneficial utilization. Because the currency notes, although paper, are issued by the government, they have full value. Similarly, this material world may be false or temporary, but because it is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, it has its full value. The Vaishnava philosophers acknowledge the full value of this material world and know how to utilize it properly, whereas the Mayavadi philosophers fail to do so. Just as those who mistake a currency note for ordinary paper discard it and cannot utilize the money. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore declares that if one rejects this material world as false, not considering the importance of this material world as a means to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such renunciation has very little value. A person who knows the intrinsic value of this material world for the service of the Lord, who is not attached to the material world, and who renounces the material world by not accepting it for sense gratification, is situated in real renunciation. This material world is an expansion of the material energy of the Lord. Therefore, it is real. It is not false, as sometimes concluded from the example of the snake and the rope.
The personified Vedas continued. The cosmic manifestation, because of the flickering nature of its impermanent existence, appears to less intelligent men to be false. The Mayavadi philosophers take advantage of the flickering nature of this cosmic manifestation to try to prove their thesis that this world is false. According to the Vedic version, before the creation, this world had no existence, and after dissolution, the world will no longer be manifested. Voidists also take advantage of this Vedic version and conclude that the cause of this material world is void. But the Vedic injunctions do not say that it is void. The Vedic injunctions define the source of creation and dissolution as yato va imani bhutani jayante, he from whom this cosmic manifestation has emanated and in whom, after annihilation, everything will merge. The same is explained in the Vedanta Sutra and in the first verse of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam by the words Janmadya Asya Yatah, he from whom all things emanate. All these Vedic injunctions indicate that the cosmic manifestation is due to the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, and that when it is dissolved, it merges into Him. The same principle is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita. The cosmic manifestation comes into existence and again dissolves, and after dissolution, it merges into the existence of the Supreme Lord. This statement definitely confirms that the particular energy known as Bahir Anga Maya, or the external energy, although of flickering nature, is the energy of the Supreme Lord, and as such it cannot be false. It simply appears false. The Mayavadi philosophers conclude that because the material nature has no existence in the beginning and is non existent after dissolution, it is false. But by the example of the earthen pots and dishes, the Vedic version is presented. Although the existence of the particular byproducts of the Absolute Truth is temporary, the energy of the Supreme Lord is permanent. The earthen pot or water jug may be broken or transformed into another space, such as that of a dish or bowl, but the ingredient or the material basis, namely the earth, continues to be the same. The basic principle of the cosmic manifestation is always the same, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. Therefore, the Mayavadi philosophers' theory that it is false is certainly only a mental concoction. That the cosmic manifestation is flickering and temporary does not mean that it is false. The definition of falsity is that which never had any existence, but which exists only in name. For instance, the eggs of a horse, or the horn of a rabbit, or the flower in the sky are phenomena which exist only in name. There are no horse's eggs, there is no rabbit's horn, and there are no flowers growing in the sky. There are many things which exist in name or imagination, but actually have no factual manifestation. Such things may be called false. But the Vaishnava cannot take this material world to be false simply because of its temporary nature, its manifesting and again dissolving.
The personified Vedas continued by saying that the super soul and the individual soul, or Paramatma and Jivatma, cannot be equal in any circumstance, although both of them sit within the same body, like two birds sitting in the same tree. As declared in the Vedas, these two birds, although sitting as friends, are not equal. One is simply a witness. This bird is the Paramatma or Super Soul. And the other bird is eating the fruit of the tree. That is the Jivatma. When there is cosmic manifestation, the Jivatma or the individual soul appears in the creation in different forms according to his previous fruitive activity. And due to his long forgetfulness of real existence, he identifies himself with a particular form awarded to him by the laws of material nature. After assuming a material form, he is subjected to the three material modes of nature and acts accordingly to continue his existence in the material world. While he is enwrapped in such ignorance, his natural opulences become almost extinct. The opulences of the Super Soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are not diminished. And although he appears within this material world, he maintains all opulences and perfections in full, while keeping himself apart from all the tribulations of this material world. The conditioned soul becomes enwrapped in the material world, whereas the Super Soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leaves it without being affected, just as a snake sheds his skin. The distinction between the Super Soul and the conditioned individual soul is that the Super Soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, maintains his natural opulences, known as Sad Aishvarya, Astasiddhi, and Astaguna.
Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers forget the fact that Krishna is always full with 6 opulences, 8 transcendental qualities, and 8 kinds of perfection. The 6 opulences are wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. No one is greater than or equal to Krishna in these 6 opulences. The first of Krishna's 8 transcendental qualities is that he is always untouched by the contamination of material existence. This is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, apapa vidam. Just as the sun is never polluted by any contamination, the Supreme Lord is never polluted by any sinful activity. Although Krishna's actions may sometimes seem impious, he is never polluted by such actions. The second transcendental quality is that Krishna never dies. In the Bhagavad-Gita, 4th chapter, he informs Arjuna that both he and Arjuna had many appearances in this material world, but that he alone remembers all such activities, past, present, and future. This means that he never dies. Forgetfulness is due to death. As we die, we change our bodies and forget. Krishna, however, is never forgetful. He can remember everything that has happened in the past. Otherwise, how could he remember that he first taught this yoga system of the Bhagavad-Gita to the sun god Vivasvan? Therefore, he never dies, nor does he ever become an old man. Although Krishna was a great-grandfather, when he appeared on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he did not appear like an old man. Krishna cannot be polluted by any sinful activity. Krishna never dies. Krishna never becomes old. Krishna is never subject to lamentation. Krishna is never hungry, and he is never thirsty. Whatever he desires is perfectly lawful, and whatever he decides cannot be changed by anyone. These are the 8 transcendental qualities of Krishna. Besides that, Krishna is known as Yogeshwara. He has all the opulences or facilities of mystic powers, such as anima siddhi, the power to become smaller than the smallest. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita that Krishna has entered even within the atom. Adantarasta paramo paramano chayantara stitam. Similarly, Krishna, as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, is within the gigantic universe, and he is lying in the causal ocean as Mahavishnu, in a body so gigantic that when he exhales, millions and trillions of universes emanate from his body. This is called Mahima Siddhi. Krishna also has the perfection of Laghima. He can become the lightest. It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that it is because Krishna enters within this universe and within the atoms that all the planets are floating in the air. That is the explanation of weightlessness. Krishna also has the perfection of prapti. He can get whatever he likes. Similarly, he has the facility of Ishita, controlling power. He is called the Supreme Controller, Parameshwara. In addition, Krishna can bring anyone under his influence. This is called Vashita.
In this way, Krishna is endowed with all opulences, transcendental qualities, and mystic powers. No ordinary living being can compare to him. Therefore, the Mayavadi's theory that the supersoul and the individual soul are equal is only a misconception. The conclusion is, therefore, that Krishna is worshipable and that all other living beings, living entities, are simply his servants. This understanding is called self-realization. Any other realization of oneself beyond this relationship of eternal servitorship of Krishna is impelled by Maya. It is said that the last snare of Maya is her dictation to the living entity to try to become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi philosopher claims to be equal to God. but he cannot reply to the questions of why he has fallen into material entanglement. If he is the Supreme Lord, then how is it that he has become overtaken by impious activities and thereby subjected to the tribulations of the law of karma? When the Mayavadis are asked about this, they cannot properly answer. The speculation that one is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is another symptom of sinful life. One cannot take to Krishna consciousness unless one is completely freed from all sinful activities. The very fact that the Mayavadi claims to be one with the Supreme Lord means that he is not yet freed from the reactions of sinful activities. Srimad Bhagavatam says that such persons are avishuddha buddhaya, which means that because they falsely think themselves liberated and at the same time think themselves equal with the absolute truth, their intelligence is not purified. The personified Vedas said that if the yogis and the jnanis do not free themselves from the sinful desires, then their particular process of self realization will never be successful.
Dear Lord, the personified Vedas continued. If saintly persons do not take care to eradicate the supersoul, although he is sitting side by side with the individual soul, samadhi or meditation means that one has to find the supersoul within himself. One who is not free from sinful reactions cannot see the supersoul. If a person has a jeweled locket in his necklace but forgets the jewel, it is almost as though he does not possess it. Similarly, if an individual soul meditates but does not actually perceive the presence of the supersoul within himself, his meditation is useless. Persons who have taken to the path of self realization must therefore be very careful to avoid contamination by the influence of Maya. Srila Rupa Goswami says that a devotee should be completely free from all sorts of material desires. A devotee should not be affected by the results of karma and jnana. One has to simply understand Krishna and carry out his desires. This is the pure devotional stage. The personified Vedas continued. Mystic yogis who still have contaminated desires for sense gratification are never successful in their attempt, nor can they realize the supersoul within the individual self. As such, the so-called yogis and jnanis who are simply wasting their time in different types of sense gratification, either by mental speculation or by exhibition of limited mystic powers, will never be liberated from conditioned life and will continue to go through repeated births and deaths. For such persons, both this life and the next life are sources of tribulation. Such sinful persons are already suffering tribulation in this life, and because they are not perfect in self realization, they will be plagued with further tribulation in the next life. Despite all endeavors to attain perfection, such yogis contaminated by desires for sense gratification will continue to suffer in this life and the next.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks in this connection that if sannyasis, persons in the renounced order of life who have left their homes for self realization, do not engage themselves in the devotional service of the Lord but become attracted by philanthropic work such as opening educational institutions, hospitals, or even monasteries, churches, or temples of demigods, they find only trouble from such engagements, not only in this life but in the next. Sannyasis who do not take advantage of this life to realize Krishna simply waste their time and energy in activities outside the jurisdiction of the renounced order. A devotee's attempt to engage his energies in such activities as constructing a Vishnu temple, however, is never wasted. Such engagements are called Krishnarthe Akhila Cheshta, variegated activities to performed to please Krishna. A philanthropist's opening a school building and a devotee is constructing a temple are not on the same level. Although philanthropist's opening an educational institution may be pious activity, it comes under the laws of karma, whereas constructing a temple for Vishnu is devotional service.
Devotional service is within the jurisdiction of the law of karma. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, Sagunan Samitit Yaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Devotees of the personality of Godhead transcend all the reactions of the three modes of material nature and are situated on the transcendental platform of Brahman realization. The devotees are liberated in both this life and the next. Any work done in this material world for Yagya, Vishnu, or Krishna is considered to be liberated work. But without connection with Achyuta, the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no possibility of stopping the resultant actions of the law of karma. The life of Krishna consciousness is the life of liberation. The conclusion is that a devotee, by the grace of the Lord, is liberated in both this life and the next, whereas karmis, jnanis, and yogis are never liberated, either in this life or in the next.
The personified Vedas continued, Dear Lord, anyone who by your grace has understood the glories of your lotus feet is callous to material happiness and distress. The material pangs are inevitable as long as we exist within the material world. But a devotee does not divert his attention to such actions and reactions, which are the results of pious and impious activities. Nor is a devotee very much disturbed or pleased by praise or condemnation from people in general. A devotee is sometimes greatly praised because of his transcendental activities, and sometimes he is criticized, even though there's no reason for adverse criticism. The pure devotee, however, is always callous to praise or condemnation by ordinary people. Actually, the devotee's activities are on the transcendental plane. He is not interested in the praise or condemnation of people engaged in material activities. If the devotee can thus maintain his transcendental position, his liberation in this life and the next is guaranteed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
A devotee's transcendental position within this material world is maintained in the association of pure devotees simply by hearing the glorious activities enacted by the Lord in different ages and in different incarnations. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. Srila Narottama Das Thakur has sung, My dear Lord, let me be engaged in your transcendental loving service as indicated by the previous acharyas, and let me live in the association of pure devotees. That is my desire, life after life. In other words, a devotee does not much care whether or not he is liberated. He is eager only for devotional service. Devotional service means that one does not do anything independently of the sanction of the acharyas. The action of the Krishna consciousness movement are directed by the previous acharyas, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. In the association of devotees, following these principles, a devotee is able to perfectly maintain his transcendental position.
In the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says, that a devotee who knows him perfectly is very dear to him. 4 kinds of pious men take to devotional service. If a pious man is in distress, he approaches the Lord for mitigation of his distress. If a pious man is in need of material help, he prays to the Lord for such help. If a pious man is actually inquisitive about the signs of God, he approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Similarly, a pious man who is simply eager to know the signs of Krishna also approaches the Supreme Lord. Out of these 4 classes of men, the last is praised by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad-Gita. A person who tries to understand Krishna with full knowledge and devotion by following in the footsteps of previous acharyas, conversant with scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord, is praiseworthy. Such a devotee can understand that all conditions of life, favorable and unfavorable, are created by the supreme will of the Lord. And when he has fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he does not care whether his condition of life is favorable or unfavorable. A devotee takes even an unfavorable condition to be the special favor of the personality of Godhead. Actually, there are no unfavorable conditions for a devotee. Knowing that everything is coming by the will of the Lord, he sees every condition as favorable, and in any condition of life, he is simply enthusiastic to discharge his devotional service. This devotional attitude is explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. A devotee is never distressed in reverse conditions of life, nor is he overjoyed in favorable conditions. In the higher stages of devotional service, a devotee is not even concerned with the list of do's and do nots. Such a position can be maintained only by following in the footsteps of acharyas. Because a pure devotee follows in the footsteps of the acharyas, any action he performs to discharge devotional service should be understood to be on the transcendental platform. Lord Krishna therefore instructs us that an acharya is above criticism. A neophyte devotee should not consider himself to be on the same plane as the acharya. It should be accepted that the acharyas are on the same platform as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, neither Krishna nor his representative acharya should be subjected to any adverse criticism by the neophyte devotees.
The personified Vedas thus worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different ways. Offering worship to the Supreme Lord by praying means remembering His transcendental qualities, pastimes, and activities. But the Lord's pastimes and qualities are unlimited. It is not possible for us to remember all the qualities of the Lord. Therefore, the personified Vedas worshipped to the best of their ability, and at the end they spoke as follows.
Dear Lord, although Lord Brahma, the predominating deity of the highest planet Brahmaloka, and King Indra, the predominating deity, demigod of the heavenly planets, as well as the predominating deities of such planets as the sun and the moon, are all very confidential directors of this material world. They have very little knowledge about you. Then, what can ordinary human beings and mental speculators know of you? It is not possible for anyone to enumerate the unlimited transcendental qualities of your lordship. No one, not even the mental speculators and the demigods in higher planetary systems, is able to estimate the length and breadth of your form and characteristics. We think that even your lordship does not have complete knowledge of your transcendental qualities. The reason is that you are unlimited. Although it is not befitting to say that you do not know yourself, it is practical to understand that because you have unlimited qualities and energies, and because your knowledge is also unlimited, there is unlimited competition between your knowledge and your expansion of energies.
The idea is that because God and His knowledge are both unlimited, as soon as God is cognizant of some of His energies, He perceives that He has still more energies. In this way, both His energies and His knowledge increase. Because both of them are unlimited, there is no end to the energies and no end to the knowledge with which to understand the energies. God is undoubtedly omniscient, but the personified Vedas say that even God Himself does not know the full extent of His energies. This does not mean that God is not omniscient. When an actual fact is unknown to a certain person, this is called ignorance or lack of knowledge. This is not applicable to God. However, because He knows Himself perfectly, but still, as His energies and activities increase, He also increases His knowledge to understand them. Both are increasing unlimitedly, and there is no end to it. In that sense, it can be said that even God Himself does not know the limit of His energies and qualities.
How God is unlimited in his expansion of energies and activities can be roughly calculated by any sane and sober living entity. It is said in the Vedic literature that innumerable universes issue forth from Mahavishnu, when Mahavishnu exhales in his Yoga Nidra, and that innumerable universes enter his body when he inhales. We have to imagine that these universes, which according to our limited knowledge are expanded unlimitedly, are so great that the gross and subtle ingredients, the 5 elements of the cosmic manifestation, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, along with the total material energy and false ego, are not only within the universe, but cover the universe in 7 layers, each layer 10 times bigger than the previous one. In this way, each and every universe is very securely packed, and there are numberless universes. All these universes float within the innumerable pores of the transcendental body of Mahavishnu. It is stated that just as the atoms and particles of dust are floating within the air, along with the birds and their number, cannot be calculated, so innumerable universes are floating within the pores of the transcendental body of the Lord. For this reason, the Vedics say that God is beyond the grasp of our knowledge, avan manasa gochara. To understand the length and breadth of God is beyond the jurisdiction of our mental speculation. Therefore, a person who is actually learned and sane doesn't claim to be God, but tries to understand God, making distinctions between spirit and matter. By such careful discrimination, one can clearly understand that the Supreme Soul is transcendental to both the superior and inferior energies, although he has a direct connection with both. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna explains that although everything is resting on his energy, he is different or separate from the energy.
Nature and the living entities are sometimes designated as Prakriti and Purusha respectively. The whole cosmic manifestation is an amalgamation of Prakriti and Purusha. Nature is the ingredient cause and the living entities are the effective cause. These two causes combine together and the effect is this cosmic manifestation. When one is fortunate enough to come to the right conclusion about this cosmic manifestation and everything going on within it, he knows it to be caused directly and indirectly by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. It is concluded in the Brahma Samhita, therefore. Ishvaraha Parma Krishna Sachid Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. After much deliberation and consideration, when one has attained the perfection of knowledge, one comes to the conclusion that Krishna or God is the original cause of all causes. Instead of speculating about the measurement of God, whether he is so long or so wide, or falsely philosophizing, one should come to the conclusion of the Brahma Samhita. Krishna or God is Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. That is the perfection of knowledge.
Thus, the Vedas Shruti, or the prayers offered by the personified Vedas to Garbhodakshay Vishnu, were first narrated in disciplic succession by Sanandana to his brothers, all of whom were born of Brahma at the beginning of the universe. The four Kumaras were the firstborn sons of Brahma. Therefore, they are known as the Purva Jata. It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that the Parampara system or the disciplic succession begins with Krishna himself. Similarly, here in the prayers of the personified Vedas, it is to be understood that the Parampara system begins with the personality of Godhead Narayana Rishi. We should remember that this Veda Stuti is narrated by Kumara Sanandana, and the narration is repeated by Narayana Rishi in Badrikashram. Narayana Rishi is the incarnation of Krishna for showing us the path of self-realization by undergoing severe austerities. In this age, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated the path of pure devotional service by putting himself in the role of a pure devotee. Similarly, in the past, Lord Narayana Rishi was an incarnation of Krishna who performed severe austerities in the Himalayan ranges. Sri Narada Muni was hearing from him. So, in the statement given by Narayana Rishi to Narad Muni, as narrated by Kumara Sanandana, in the form of the Veda Stuti, it is understood that God is the one supreme and that all others are his servants.
In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated, Ekale Ishvara Krishna. Krishna is the only supreme God. Ara Sabhabhritya. All others are his servants. Yare Yaiche Nachaya Se Taiche Kare Nritya. The Supreme Lord, as he desires, is engaging all the living entities in different activities, and thus they exhibit their different talents and tendencies. The Vedastuti is thus the original instruction regarding the relationship existing between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The highest platform of realization for the living entity is the attainment of devotional life. One cannot be engaged in devotional life or Krishna consciousness unless one is fully free from material contamination. Narayana Rishi informed Narad Muni that the essence of all the Vedas and Vedic scriptures, namely the four Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and the Vedanta Sutra, is to render transcendental loving service to the Lord. In this connection, Narayana Rishi has used one particular word, rasa. In devotional service, this rasa is the medium or the basic principle for the exchange of dealings between the Lord and the living entity. Rasa is also described in the Vedas, raso vai sa. The Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure. All the Vedic scriptures, including the Puranas, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Vedanta Sutra, teach the living entities how to attain the stage of rasa. Bhagavatam also says that the statements in the Mahapurana, Srimad Bhagavatam, constitute the essence, rasa, of all Vedic literature. Nigamakal pataror galitam palam. The Bhagavatam is the essence of the ripened fruit of the tree of the Vedic literature.
We understand
understand that with the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there issued forth the four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, and also the histories like the Mahabharata and all the Puranas, which are considered to be the history of the world. The Vedic histories like the Puranas and the Mahabharata are called the fifth Veda. The 28 verses of the Veda Stuti are to be considered the essence of the Vedic knowledge. The four Kumaras and all other authorized sages known perfectly that devotional service is Krishna consciousness, is the essence of all Vedic literature, and they preach this on different planets, traveling in outer space. It is stated herein that such sages, including Narada Muni, hardly ever traveled on land. They perpetually travel in space.
Sages like Narada and the Kumaras travel throughout the universe to educate the conditioned souls that their business in the world is not that of sense gratification, but of reinstating themselves in their original position of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in several places that the living entities are like sparks of the fire, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like the fire itself. If the sparks somehow or other fall out of the fire, they lose their natural illumination. Thus, it is ascertained that the living entities come into this material world exactly as sparks fall from a great fire. The living entity wants to imitate Krishna and tries to lord it over material nature in order to enjoy sense gratification. Thus, he forgets his original position and his illuminating power. His spiritual identity is extinguished. However, if a living entity takes to Krishna consciousness, he is reinstated in his original position. To preach this process of devotional service, sages and saints like Narada and the Kumaras travel all over the universe, educating people and increasing their disciples. Their aim is that all the conditioned souls may be educated to revive their original consciousness or Krishna consciousness, and thus gain relief from the miserable conditions of material life.
Sri Narada Muni is a Naishtika Brahmachari. There are 4 types of Brahmacharis. The first is called Savitra, which refers to a Brahmachari who, after initiation and the sacred thread ceremony, must observe at least 3 days of celibacy. The next is Prajapatya, which refers to a brahmachari who strictly observes celibacy for at least 1 year after initiation. The next is called Brahmachari, which refers to a brahmachari who observes celibacy from the time of initiation up to the time of the completion of his study of the Vedic literature. The next stage is called Naishtika, which refers to a brahmachari who is celibate throughout his whole life. Out of these, the first 3 are Upakurvana, which means that the brahmachari can marry later, after the brahmachari period is over. The Naishtika brahmachari, however, is completely reluctant to have any sex life. Therefore, the Kumaras and Narada are known as Naishtika brahmacharis. Such brahmacharis are called Veera Vrata because their vow of celibacy is as heroic as the vows of the Kshatriyas. The brahmachari system of life is especially advantageous in that it increases the power of memory and determination. It is specifically mentioned in this connection that because Narada was a Naishtika brahmachari, he could remember whatever he heard from his spiritual master and would never forget it. One who can remember everything perpetually is called a Shrutidhara. Shrutidhara. A Shrutidhara Brahmachari can repeat verbatim all that he has heard, without notes and without reference to books. The great sage Narada has this qualification, and therefore, having taken instructions from Narayana Rishi, he is engaged in propagating the philosophy of devotional service all over the world. Because such great sages can remember everything, they are thoughtful, self realized, and completely fixed in the service of the Lord.
Thus, the great sage Narada, after hearing from his spiritual master Narayana Rishi, became completely realized. He became established in the truth, and he became so happy that he offered prayers to Narayana Rishi. Narada Muni addressed Narayana Rishi as an incarnation of Krishna, and specifically addressed him as the supreme well-wisher of the conditioned souls. It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that Lord Krishna descends in every millennium just to give protection to his devotees and to annihilate the non-devotees. Narayana Rishi, being an incarnation of Krishna, is also addressed as the well-wisher of the conditioned souls. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, everyone should know that there is no well-wisher like Krishna. Everyone should understand that Lord Krishna is the supreme well-wisher of everyone and should take shelter of him. In this way, one can become completely confident and satisfied, knowing that he has someone who is able to give him all protection. Krishna himself, his incarnations, and his plenary expansions are all supreme well-wishers of the conditioned souls. But Krishna is a well-wisher even of the demons, for he gave salvation to all the demons who came to kill him in Vrindavan. Therefore, Krishna's welfare activities are absolute, for whether he annihilates a demon or gives protection to a devotee, the result of his activities is one and the same. It is said that the demon Putana was elevated to the same position as that of Krishna's mother. When Krishna kills a demon, the demon is supremely benefited, as much as a pure devotee is benefited by always being protected by the Lord.
Narada Muni, after offering respects to Narayana Rishi, went to the ashram of Vyasadeva, his disciple. Being properly received by Vyasadeva in his ashram and seated very comfortably, Narad Muni narrated the entire story of what he had heard from Narayana Rishi. In this way, Sukadev Goswami informed Maharaja Parikshit of the answers to his questions regarding the essence of Vedic knowledge and what is considered to be the ultimate goal in the Vedas. The supreme goal of life is to achieve the transcendental blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become engaged in the loving service of the Lord. One should follow in the footsteps of Shukadev Goswami and all the other Vaishnavas in the disciplic succession and should pay respectful obeisances unto Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. The four sects of Vaishnava disciplic succession, namely the Madhva Sampradaya, the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, and the Nimbarka Sampradaya, in pursuance of all Vedic conclusions, agree that one should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Vedic literature is divided into two parts, the Shrutis and the Smritis. The Shrutis are the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Atharva and Yajur, and the Upanishads, and the Smritis are Puranas and the Itihasas like the Mahabharata, which includes Bhagavad-Gita. The conclusion of all this is that one should know Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Param Purusha or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose superintendence material nature works. For creation, maintenance, and annihilation, the Supreme Lord incarnates into three: Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, after manifesting the material cosmos. All of these take charge of the three modes of material nature, but the ultimate direction is in the hand of Lord Vishnu. The complete activities of material nature under the three modes are conducted under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita, Maya Dakshana, and in the Vedas as Aikshata. Vedas Sa Aikshata.
The atheistic Sankhyaite philosophers will, of course, offer their arguments that the material cosmic manifestation is due to Prakriti and Purusha, material nature and the living entity, or the material cause and the effective cause. But Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the cause of both the material and the effective causes. Prakriti and Purusha are not the ultimate cause. Superficially, it appears that a child is born due to the combination of the mother and father, but the ultimate cause of both the father and the mother is Krishna. He is therefore the original cause, or the cause of all causes, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita.
Both the Supreme Lord and the living entities enter into the material nature. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, by one of his plenary expansions, manifests as Karanodakshai Mahavishnu, the gigantic Vishnu form lying in the causal ocean. Then, from that gigantic form of Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu expands and enters into every universe. From him, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva expand. Vishnu, as Kshirodakshai, enters into the hearts of all living entities, as well as into all material elements, including the atom. The Brahma Samhita says, Andantarastha Paramanu Chayantarastham. The Lord is within this universe and also within every atom.
The living entity has a small material body taken in various species and forms. And similarly, the whole universe is but the material body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This body is described in the Shastras as Virata Rupa. As the individual living entity maintains his particular body, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains the whole cosmic creation, entering within it. As soon as the individual living entity leaves the material body, the body is immediately annihilated. And similarly, as soon as Lord Vishnu leaves the cosmic manifestation, everything is annihilated. Therefore, only when the individual living entity surrenders onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his liberation from material existence possible. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Surrendering onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and nothing else is therefore the cause of liberation. How the living entity becomes liberated from the modes of material nature after surrendering onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is illustrated by the example of a sleeping man within a room. When a man is sleeping, everyone sees that he is present within that room, within the room. But actually, the man himself is not within that body. For while sleeping, a man forgets his bodily existence, although others may see that his body is present. Similarly, a liberated person engaged in devotional service to the Lord may be seen by others to be engaged in the household duties of the material world. But since his consciousness is fixed in Krishna, he does not live within this world. His engagements are different, exactly as the sleeping man's engagements are different from his bodily engagements. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita that a devotee engaged full time in the transcendental loving service of the Lord has already surpassed the influence of the three modes of material nature. He is already situated on the Brahman platform and is in the transcendental realm, although he appears to be living within the body or within the material world.
In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami states in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the person whose only desire is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead may be situated in any condition in the material world, but he is to be understood as Jivan Mukta. That is to say, he is to be considered liberated while living within the body or the material world. The conclusion, therefore, is that a person fully engaged in Krishna consciousness is a liberated person. Such a person actually has nothing to do with his material body or the material world. Those who are not in Krishna consciousness are called karmis and jnanis. They hover on the bodily and mental platforms and thus are not liberated. This situation is called Kaivalya Nirashtra Yoni. But a person is situated on the transcendental platform is freed from the repetition of birth and death. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita, 4th chapter. Quotes, simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, one becomes free from the chains of the repetition of birth and death, and after quitting his present body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. Unquote. This is the conclusion of all the Vedas. And thus, after understanding the prayers offered by the personified Vedas, one should surrender unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 87th chapter of Krishna, prayers by the personified Vedas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That concludes our today's Krishna book reading to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for allowing us to read Krishna book to you. As usual, we pay our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine. And to each other, Vancha Kalpatarubhecha Krupa Sindhupa Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we'll see next week at 4:30 p.m. for our regular Krishna book reading. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada.